back to our channel, or welcome to our channel. If you saw our short that we posted recently, this month is Adoption Awareness Month, and so we're doing adoption videos just because that was part of our journey, and it's something that we still want to raise awareness to. And if you saw our video last week, that was the start of that. And in that, we talked about making a video on funding your adoption and ways to fund your adoption. So that's what we're doing today. We are going through ways to fund your adoption, just to help people out. One of the main obstacles to a lot of families who want to adopt is funding their adoption and just affording adoption in general. So there is help out there, but a lot of people don't talk about it, and so we're gonna talk about it. Some of these things are things that we use, and some of these things are things that we came across that maybe we don't qualify for, but maybe someone out there does, and so I added it on there. Some of these things are things that we didn't use just because we didn't, but I try to add different resources. So we'll talk a little bit about our personal experience, and then some stuff we didn't use, but I want to put it out there because it is good resource. Yes. Heard you. So there are good resources, and if you see me looking down, I have some research that I printed out as well as on my phone, and so I might be reading some stuff, and I just also gathered some stuff from our adoption, like the paperwork and stuff, so I might have to read some stuff just to refresh my memory, or things that we didn't do ourselves. It might be stuff that I researched and think is a good resource, but I have to read it off. So if you see me looking down, that's why. So the first, I'm just gonna get my research open. It's on my phone, so.
And we're gonna try and be as helpful as we can with just some friendly advice on the application process, because not every grant has the same application. Some are very short and to the point. Other ones are long, so it can your miles may vary. So it depends on what you're filling out.
So before we get started, I just want to say that affording adoption is an obstacle and can be an obstacle for many people trying to adopt, many couples trying to adopt. But if it's something you want to do, that shouldn't be something that stops you, because there is help out there. So just take it one step at a time. Really do your research, because there's a lot of help out there that no one talks about. There are things that I found researching for this video that I never found when we were actually going through the journey. So there are new things every day, because a lot of the stuff that I found that I didn't find before, it was because it was marked 2022 year to 2023. So there are new grants that pop up, there are new things that pop up every year. So really do your research. And if you are one of those couples that are waiting family for a long time, and you're still waiting and you're still in your adoption journey, maybe a year in, 2 years in, maybe you think that you've found all the grants and there's no more help, and then you actually do get a placement call or something. But if you're going through it for a couple of years, you want to always update and do new research, because I just realized there are a lot more grants coming up every year and new every year. So if you're going through it for a extended amount of time, you might want to refresh your research and see if there's any more help as you get closer to actually getting placed. But not everyone has a long wait, but if you do unfortunately have a long wait, that is one thing that you might want to do. And even for those who are looking to adopt, don't know if they're going to adopt, just do your research really well. But we're going to give you some tips. So tip number one, I would say, is it depends where you're coming from when you come to adoption. So I would say if you know that you want to adopt, or if you're someone who, before you even meet the person you're going to be with, or before you get married or whatever, knows that you have an infertility problem, and that you probably want to build your family through adoption, I would say, or even if you're someone who doesn't have infertility or doesn't know if they do or not, but you just know that one day you want to build your family through adoption, or if you're someone who was adopted by themselves and you know that that's how you want to build your family, I would say to start planning very early on.
Starting very early, even including savings and stuff like that. Every little thing goes a long way. So never underestimate the power of saving. If you have investments, to help, raise your money a little bit quicker, invest, make sure you have it ready.
Because for some people, you might have savings, but just having that extra savings that's specifically allocated towards adoption, if you already know and you're already planning, would help. So if you're already know and you're already planning, or even if you're married and just starting the conversation, but you know that it's a little bit down the road, start saving as soon as you decide that it's something that you definitely want to do in the future. Because having that, even if you only have half, so as we talked about in the last video, not all the fees are due at the same time. They're due at specific points in the journey. And so even if you have half, that means you probably have all of what you need for the before placement, and then you would have to worry just about placement. And just having half, or even having less than half, it would help. It would help because at least you can get this process started and then save as you go. So that's the first tip, if you have that option. But if you're like us who didn't know that they were going to adopt when they did, we've talked about it in the past, but we talked about it as a maybe, we talked about it in the future, and then we didn't know that we were going to go through infertility, we didn't know we were going to get unexpectedly pregnant during the adoption journey, we didn't know that all of those things was going to happen, and all of those things affected like finance as well. But you only can plan for what you can plan for, and the things you can't plan for, you can only do so much. So if you're somebody who's gonna jump right in, who just found themselves in a situation, there are still ways, and you can still, start saving as you go. So the first thing would be that even if you are starting the process and you have no idea how you're gonna fund it, you should be saving as you go, because even if you pay for maybe the first thing, maybe the classes, you should still be saving as you go to get that money towards the end. So that's the first tip. And then you're gonna have to put yourself on a stricter budget than whatever you're on now. So the first thing would be to look at your budget and really go line by line and break down that budget and find areas that you can find areas that you can maybe cut, find areas that you can save more, find things and put that money all towards your adoption. And honestly, you're gonna have to do that for your home study anyway. They make you submit your budget and they make you go line by line. You have to show everything that's coming into your household and everything that's going out, probably more thorough than you ever have for anything else that you've ever filled out.
And we know this is gonna sound like a little weird, but it may feel a little invasive because they want to actually know that you can afford the process but also provide for a family, and a lot of this has to do with legal fees, if anything. So that's pretty much where the bulk of all this is coming from. So the best thing to, like Justine said, go line by line, section by section, just list everything out, and that way you'll see where your money is going in or out.
Right. No, like I said, you're gonna have to do that for your home study anyway, so might as well get an early start on it, so that way you help with the little bulk of paperwork that you're gonna have to do. And also, it's just good practice for having a family to just learn how to budget in general, but it's gonna help you save, it's gonna help you finance your adoption. I'm just gonna pull up the rest of my notes, take her, because if she sees my phone, she's like, phone! So yeah, planning, saving, and then the other tip that I have, this wasn't an option for us unfortunately, but it is a good tool for people who have it, which is that some employers offer adoption help through your company. A lot of city jobs do it, but also a lot of more private I think, because they just have the funds, so I don't think it's talked about a lot because I've never really seen it listed on a job.
Yeah, it's kind of like, so if like usually, like, we all recognize like educational expenses, so how some people's jobs reimburse you for tuition or just pay for the tuition outright. There are some of those that exist in places that you would never think would have it. Like I think if I'm not mistaken, Wendy's is one of them. So if you work at a Wendy's, and I believe they have an adoption section because I believe the owner was adopted, or he was adopted.
So you never know what your company offers until you ask. A lot of these things are not spoken about, unfortunately, and until you ask, or unless you ask, unless you have a reason to ask, no one really tells you. So no matter where you work, just look into if they offer any adoption finance. You're gonna have to tell your employer that you're adopting anyway, because they have to sign off on some things. You have to show proof of employment if you report that you are working, and so that conversation kind of comes up pretty early on with your employer that, hey, I'm going through the adoption process, and can you sign this paperwork for me? So they're gonna know, but you can also throw in that does our company help with adoption in any way and things like that. That is just one thing that I did put on there because a lot of companies do help, but people don't really. It's not in the packet when you join the company.
Yeah, it's not in the career or benefits page. You literally have to ask.
You have to ask.
Unless it's one of those really like deep companies that decide to list everything, but that's not what in our experience, that's not what's really on the website.
Yeah, maybe in the future people will start to kind of advertise it more as adoption is growing, but as far as in our experience, we found out that a lot of companies did actually have it, and we were surprised because no one knew. There were a couple people who we met who didn't know that their jobs would help them, and then they found out and they actually got a good chunk of money. A lot. Some people I know got like $5,000. You can get a good chunk. It depends on your company and what they offer, or if they even offer it, but it's something worth looking into. So yeah, and then the other stuff is just based on your agency. So the next stuff on my list is based on your agency. So for example, our agency was income based, and so your fees, they worked on a sliding scale, and so your fees kind of depended. There was brackets, so there was a certain amount for people who made X, and then there was a certain amount for people who made X. Like there were brackets that changed. So adoption is still like a good amount of money, like it's gonna cost you money, but specifically with an agency that works maybe on a sliding scale, it may cost you a little bit less depending on your income. And just them working with your income helps you, because then you're not paying so much that you can't even afford.
And usually, at least in our experience of researching, if it's on a sliding scale, most of the time they have nothing to hide, so they're just literally just like, okay, well, if you want, and this is what it looks like on a private scale.
Right.
Go out and go check, and just to double check the numbers, and it's within pretty much what you already discussed. Yeah. It's only when you see like someone's trying to like hide stuff. Yeah, when someone's trying to hide stuff, it's kind of like, this may not be the right agency, because if you're trying to hide stuff now, then what else are you hiding? Okay.
Yeah, so, and our agency was pretty good at being transparent about the money portion. As we mentioned in previous videos, a lot of the people that work in our agency had prior experience to adoption. A lot of them are parents of adoptees, and so they went through the adoption process themselves. They had to pay for those fees themselves, and so they know how it feels on that end. And so they were pretty transparent. A lot of, I would say, I can't speak for all agencies, but in our experience, it was pretty good at being just transparent about it. And also, like I said, them working with your budget and working on a sliding scale did help. And so you might want to look at how your agency does finances. Like we said, I said it in a previous video as well. When we were narrowing down our agencies, one of the reasons we chose our agency over another agency was that the other agency didn't work on a sliding scale, and it was a little bit on the higher end, and it was just out of our budget. And why would you spend unnecessary money, especially when it's something already expensive? So just looking at how your agency deals with the finances, maybe they help, maybe they work on a sliding scale, do they work with your budget, asking those questions and doing your own research about it and seeing what best fits your needs. You don't want to choose an agency just based off of finance, but that is a big portion of it, and you want to be able to afford your adoption, and so just looking into that is good. And then also our agency also offered informational classes. As I said, our agency was very good on education. They offered classes on the entire process of adoption, different topics about adoption, but one of the big things was also finances. We took a class on financing your adoption, and they gave us a lot of tips and tricks that we did use. Some we didn't apply to us, but we learned about it. Other people learned about it. And so seeing if your agency even talks about finances, educates about finances, will help you figure out how to fund your adoption, would be different than an agency who doesn't do that. So just, again, doing your research on that. And then the next big thing that we're going to talk about is grants. And I think grants is the biggest way that people fund their adoption besides funding it with your own money. I think grants is probably the biggest help, because they're the most research that we found, and there's so many of them. But I want to talk about it a little bit, because a lot of people, when they hear grants, they're like, oh, we're not religious, so we can't get grants, because a lot of the grants that are known are a religious affiliate or like a Christian grant or something like that. And there are a lot, but there are some that are not. So we're going to share kind of our experience, and then some extra ones that I found that we don't really apply to us, but it might apply to someone out there.
And remember that grants, you do not have to pay back. It is not a loan or anything like that. So if you went to college or anything like that, and you had like FAFSA, you have to apply for FAFSA, you get the Pell Grant, right? Or if you got scholarships, it's basically a scholarship but no education, right? You do not have to pay any of this money back. It's usually through a foundation or a nonprofit, and you know everything has its terms and conditions. So I guess one of the tips, I don't know if we mentioned it, but read the fine print. It's not to say that the grant is like a loan where you have to read the fine print, but there are some grants that have certain parameters that you have to think about, and some of those parameters aren't necessarily disclosed right away because some people don't apply, so they don't feel the need to put out all the extra information. Yeah, I'll take care of it. So then, so keep in mind that if you are lucky enough to get one of these grants, you know, congratulations. Just make sure you read everything properly before you sign any paperwork, and get all your questions out. Ask them directly. They want that.
So as I said, I did a lot of research about grants for this video, but we also pulled our information, and so the only 2 grants that we have experience with is Gift of Adoption and Help Us Adopt, which is probably 2 of the bigger grants, well-known grants, and those are open to pretty much anyone that's home study approved. So you have to be home study approved before the grant, but pretty much once you're home study approved, there is no religious affiliance or there's no really stipulation except for the fact that you have to have your home study approved and you have to have proof of that. And then I think with Help Us Adopt, anyone can apply, but the only thing is that they give priority to families that do struggle with infertility and have no children.
Yeah, and I'll get a little bit more into that.
So I'm gonna let Sam talk about those 2 just because he took the reins when it came to applying for our grants, and then I'm gonna talk about ones that we didn't really have experience in, but we have other people that did use them, or they are just good resources, and I'm gonna go through that.
So starting with Gift of Adoption. Gift of Adoption, you know, that was one of the ones that the agency recommended in general, like in the information pamphlet. So I had to do some research, and the application process wasn't long. It was maybe like a page, if that, with just general information. They're very friendly people. You can pick up the phone and call them first. Like I called and asked a bunch of questions about how does it work and things like that. So they were very informative about it. There is, at least from when at the time of this recording, at the time of when we applied, there was an application fee. So some grants,
the research.
Yeah, some grants have an application fee. Okay, and that's because adoption is like I said, it's not like a for-profit thing or anything like that. Just because you apply, they still need, it's a non-profit, so they still need someone to come over and read it through everything, and it's not easy when you get thousands of applications. So and it's usually kind of small, a small team. So there is an application fee, and usually they're very fast with their one of the main things is that the representatives are really great. And one of the main things that when they talk about their responses, they'll let you know, hey, you're like part of the finalists or anything like that, or you might be very well in your favor to be selected if you get the email that says, hey, your application has been tentatively being reviewed by the committee, and they'll give you all the instructions of what you have to do, like just wait for this date. And they'll ask you for an update. So once there's an update, if your agency has told you that you're still on a waiting list, then they just want to know just if you're still waiting or if you have a potential case. That way they can align funds properly. And so usually so for Gift of Adoption, they'll want to know if you like what the update is with the agency. If you're still on the waiting list, or if you have a tentative case, that way they can move funds around. If you're a waiting family, like if you're literally about to, like if your case is being reviewed, so that way they're ready. However, they know that the adoption can also take a bit. So what usually tends to happen is they'll tell you like how many cases have you been up for and so on. But that's all. And like I said, if you don't get a case right away, then what will usually happen is they'll tell you, okay, just your application has been pushed back to the next meeting, whenever that meeting would be, and they give you firm dates of when the committee usually meets on those times. The other one that was also is kind of, this one's a little bit longer. Help Us Adopt, I believe it's .org.
Yeah, .org. Helpusadopt.org is
and gift of adoption is also .org or .com. I don't.
.org. It's all .org
It's
because
pink.
it's
It's pink. I remember. It's a pink website.
I'll link I'm gonna link
Yeah.
all of the grants and all the resources that I found in the description box, so you can, if you're a family that's like looking for grants and stuff like that, or looking to even just research about the adoption, you can just click on it and research it from this video.
Yeah. So helpusadopt.org was actually is a slightly longer application. You know, they ask you for like, why do you want why do you need the grants? How much did this is when a lot of the questions can get a little.
Help Us Adopt was the one that I had to write the essay for, right? That I helped you write. We wrote the essay together.
That was, yes, that's the one.
Yeah, so there's an essay that's like,
I think there's
basically,
1 or 2. Yeah.
Yeah, why you're adopting, and they ask you to write a full essay on your story, and so you kind of have to like figure out how you're gonna word it and tell your story. But I kind of like that because it gives the personal touch for you to be allowed to tell your story, which is
and
good.
they'll tell you like they'll recommend you work on it on like Microsoft Word or something like that first. Do it there first. Check the word count and then move it over. That way you don't accidentally get lost or whatever. But that one actually asks you for a lot of details, like what are your expenses? What is your monthly household income? Your yearly income? Do you have any debt? What kind of debt? How much of that debt? So they want to know.
But the thing is that by the time you get to the point where now you're filling out for grants, like I said, in these 2 particular instances and in most grants, you're already home study approved, and so you already did that with the agency.
Yeah.
And
so then it's just about moving stuff over. Copy paste.
Right.
Yeah.
So you already have to do that paperwork. That's why I said it's good if you can get an early start to that. But
yeah, the only adjustments is really like if you've gotten a raise or there's been like some minor adjustment here or there, but that's about it. You know, like if you have a pension or a retirement system, they want to know that. If you have an investment or IRAs, things like that, they want to know, so that way they know how much they can appropriate, because they give out their grants to I think a even smaller group, but the grant it says on their website is a little bit larger on average.
Oh, so I actually have in my grant research, I actually have them on there. I think so. It actually tells you.
And you know what? One thing like that we want to like emphasize is make sure you're honest. You know, like they actually appreciate that. You know, it was great.
You have to be honest in the whole adoption process. Sometimes it could be intimidating, or you can get like worried or scared about something. But honestly, you have to be honest.
There are people too. They're like, it's okay. Like, okay, at the end of the day, you need help to start your family. So there are people who are willing to do so. So helpusadopt.org, right, does not have an application fee though. It's completely free to apply.
And I'm actually on their website right now. It doesn't have an application fee. It doesn't have a religious affiliate requirement. It does, you do have to be home study approved, but in their special notes, it does say, Help Us Adopt is for everyone, but they prioritize families without children or those who have had a failed adoption placement. So that would be if you were matched with a child and then went through an entire pregnancy with an expected mother, and that person for whatever reason decided to change their mind, and so you were never actually placed. So you were matched but not placed. It says additionally, we prioritize applicants who are not pregnant but who are trying to conceive or going through infertility treatments. So you can apply, anyone can apply, even if you don't fit that criteria, but just know that they do give priority to that. And so if you are a family that is coming to adoption through infertility or through like anything that they listed, just know that you do get priority. And if you're not, that doesn't mean don't apply, because honestly, like when it comes to grants, it never hurts to apply. You can apply to as many as you qualify for, is the word I was looking for.
The worst that they can say to you is no. So, and you know what, like I said, it never hurts to apply. So just do it. Be completely honest and transparent. They're all for that. They always want to try and help people. So just do your best with that. Okay. I don't know if we touched on it earlier. Some grants do it, like I said, reading the fine print, like I said, have certain parameters or stipulations. Make sure that, like, some of them require, like, if you're working with an agency, they need to know the agency's name, the license number of the agency, the representative that is in charge of your case or this set of cases or whatever, so that way they know what's going on. Because you're dealing with a lot of financial issues and, you know, a lot of income that potentially would impact, or when someone pays for your stuff, is that they need to be able to make that contact. Yeah.
Teasing.
Yes.
And that goes back to what I was saying before, and that's why I say it would help to at least have the first half of your adoption fees, or to find another way that you're going to get those fees. You okay?
Yeah.
To find another way that you're going to finance that first half, because honestly, I have not, in my research and even in what the you okay? In my research and even in what the adoption agency has told us, I have never came across a grant where you don't have to be home study approved.
Yeah.
And so by the time you're home study approved, you're already paid for a lot of different fees, like we talked about in our last video, like the application fee, the classes. Is there anything else? The application fee, the classes. I'm going to link the other video that we did about adoption, because in there I list everything that you have to do and when you do them, like the steps. But basically what I'm saying is there are fees before you are home study approved. And so even if you're looking to do a grant, the grant is going to cover mostly that after home study and the placement. What happened to? And placement fees. And so you have to find other ways to know that you can afford that other stuff before you're home study approved. There might be grants out there that you don't need a home study approval, but I haven't found any in my research. So if there are, they're probably smaller or hard to find, far and few and in between. And most of that is because no one wants to give money to people who are not going to get home study approved. That home study approval is what says that you are legally allowed and able to adopt, and that the agency is willing to move forward with you. And so that's when people are willing to say, okay, they've been through, remember, once you home study approved, you've been through all the background checks, all of those things. And so you're kind of getting the okay that, okay, these people kind of check out, so to speak. And so honestly, that's when the grants become a thing. Just disclaimer. And then I'm going to talk about some of the other grants that I found. Some of these we found while we were going through our process, but we didn't qualify for them. And some of these are actually brand new as of this year, the 2020 to 2023 year. So there's one called Children Waits. As I said, I'm looking at my phone only because I have the research on there. But Children Waits Foundation. And that is for international adoption. So as I said, we don't really talk about international adoption much on this channel. We have no experience in international adoption except for a small amount of research that we did at the very beginning of our journey. But I'm going to include them here just because some people might be looking into all forms of adoption and trying to decide what's best for them while they do this research, while they look at our channel, while they figure out what's best for them. And so this is an international adoption grant. The program is dedicated to families who are completing their adoption and help with international costs for adoption. So there are added costs when it comes to international adoption because you need to travel, unite with the child, and sometimes you have to stay in that country or wherever you're adopting from for a long period of time. And so that, travel costs, those things add up. So this is an option for international adoption. And it says that there's no deadline. You can apply any time of year. You do have to have a home study. And then there's no religious affiliation. So that's open to even people who don't have a religious affiliation. And it says that you have to have a gross income that's less than $150,000 a year. You can apply through through online or mail. And it does have an application fee of $20. And it says that you can apply after you've been placed. So what that means is that they will help with like the placement fees even after. So there are a few fees like legal fees and things like that are even after you get matched that this grant would help cover, but it's only for international adoption, as I said. And then we already talked about, you okay?
Okay, let's go for a walk.
Okay, and then JSC Foundation is also came up on our research. We actually found this grant when we were it's been around a couple of years, I believe, because we actually found this grant when we were doing our research, but we didn't apply for it because it is a Christian grant, and you do have to have a religious affiliation. But I'm gonna add it here because some people might have a church that they're affiliated with. They might be Christian couples that follow the channel, and I'm gonna add it here because it might help someone else. So as I said, JSC Foundation, so I'm going to link them below as well, and they do have deadlines, but they're throughout the year. They're like every 3 months, so you can just look on their website. You do have to be home study approved. As I said, I didn't find any that didn't say you did, and it just says, as far as the religious requirement, it says you must be a practicing Christian in order to receive this grant, and you must have a letter from your church kind of as proof. And the income requirement is that you have to make less than $120,000 a year. You can submit the application online, and it says there's a special note on here that also says, so this is another stipulation to this grant in particular. It says this grant is only awarded to married couples and not single individuals. So this is only for married couples, not couples that are looking to adopt that are unmarried, and unfortunately not for people who are adopting by themselves, but it is an option for some people. And then the next one is International Adoption Foundation, and this is for families that are looking into special needs adoption. So that is a stipulation with this grant. It says that if you're looking for special needs adoption, so there are people that are looking to adopt a child that it would be considered hard to place, which are children that have other needs where where a large percent of families maybe wouldn't be able to adopt them, but there are families that are open to children with special needs. Maybe you have a background in caring for those children, and you're looking to adopt a child with special needs. And special needs in the adoption community ranges as to what that means. So, but this grant is particularly for special needs adoption. So if you're someone who's open to that, and someone who is matched with a case and it becomes special needs, and you're open to that, and you end up getting matched with someone and you're open to it, this is actually a grant that is good. And it says your home study must be completed as well. There's no religious affiliation. Actually, with this one, there's no income requirement either. It's online. There is an application fee of $15, but the only stipulation is that it's a special needs adoption. And then the next one is Show Hope. So this one just looks like an open grant. However, there is a religious affiliation as well. So it just says you must agree to Show Hope's statement of faith. And when I looked in their website, it's on their website, their statement of faith is Christian based. So this one does have a religious stipulation, but it's a little bit different than others where they say that you have to be part of a Christian church and you have to have a pastor or a reverend or a priest sign off on it, or your church sign off on it. This one just says you have to agree with the statement. It doesn't say you have to be actively involved in a specific church, but I guess you have to be consider yourself Christian. The next one's called Zoe's Rainbow, and this one I actually never heard of before, but I think it's pretty new, and it's by a foundation called what's the foundation? It's called Never Alone Foundation, and it says it assists with orphan children and helping with expenses, right? So there's no application deadline, but you do have to be home study approved. Like I said, I never found any that you didn't. There's no religious affiliation. The application is downloadable online, so that's easy. There's no application fee, but it is for international adoption, and international adoption specifically through orphanages and probably through specific countries, but it doesn't say that here. But I'm gonna link it all below, and you can research it if you're interested. And yeah, so those are the main grants that I found. So some of them do have a religious affiliation, some of them don't. Some of them are for international adoption. So as I said, you have to do your research because there are kind of a pool of grants for everyone, and just apply to anything that you, my advice would be just apply to anything that you qualify for and then see what happens. Like Sam said, like we said, the worst thing they could say to you is no, but you can also get a yes. Just in all the paperwork you have to do for your adoption, just add on the grants. It never helps. It never hurts to have that extra help, especially when you're trying to come up with the funds and finance your adoption. And then, so those are all the grants, but the last thing is, well, not the last thing, but the other thing is fundraising. And fundraising, we don't have experience in. We chose not to. I know a lot of people have like mixed feelings in the adoption community about fundraising. We're not against it, but we just chose not to. As I said in previous videos, we were kind of going through the adoption process and kind of dealt with it on our own. But I'm just gonna put them out there as well. You can do things that people that are well known, like a GoFundMe. You can do GoFundMe for an adoption, but there's also a specific one for adoption that's kind of like a GoFundMe, which is called Adopt Together. And it's basically similar. It's the same thing. It's like a GoFundMe, but it's specifically a website for adoption, and people can donate to your cause. You can kind of put the amount that's needed. So sometimes maybe if you already paid for some stuff and you need some extra money, maybe the last little bit, you can do a fundraiser that way. And then there's also this cool one that I thought that a couple other people that I know that adopted used, which is called Bonfire. And it's a kind of fun way to fundraise, where you make a t-shirt and you set the price for that t-shirt, and everyone who buys a t-shirt, that money goes towards your adoption. And then that's kind of a fun way to bring the community together, get people involved in your adoption, and also raise money. And the last thing I'm gonna bring up is loans. And I know some people might say like they don't want to go into debt, but that's just like a last option. And the reason I bring it up is because there's two types of loans. Like, you may need to take a personal loan if you don't have the funds at the very last minute, like if you get placed at the last minute or something, and it's like the last fees.
Oh, I'll take her. It's okay. Go ahead.
The last fees, but also there are adoption specific loans. There are something called adoption loans. I'll link whatever I can find. They're not that many, but they are out there, and the reason why they're good is because they're specifically to help people finance their adoptions, and a lot of them are interest free if you're going through adoption, or low interest, very, very low interest if you can prove the adoption. And so even though you have to pay it back, you wouldn't have to pay it back as much as like a private loan or a personal loan or a bank loan. And so those are good to look into as last resorts, or it's something that you're investing in your family, and you don't know where everyone comes to adoption from a different place. So if you need that little extra cash, as long as you're looking at your budget and making sure you can make those payments back later, it's a resource out there for you. But you want to look at those adoption loans before you look at private loans, just because you want to see if you can get approved for an adoption loan versus a private loan, because the adoption loans, like I said, usually have either no interest because they are trying to help people adopt, or very, very low interest through the adoption.
Sorry, so we switched. Teething, standing up while she's teething apparently keeps her quiet for a little while. So one of the last things that you should know is that adoption, you get a federal tax credit, which also reminds you to check your state as well. Check your local state laws as well as the federal. You automatically get a federal tax credit. So for the federal tax credit, at the time of this posting, it should still be there. What you have to, your adopted child has to already be placed inside of your house. So you have to literally have their social security number and everything like that. And what you're gonna do is you have to go to your accountant. They should know what form to get you, right? But if they don't, just go to irs.gov and you just run a search for adoption, and it'll automatically pull up the form that you need and take it to your accountant. You fill out the form and you will get a federal tax credit. What that means is you won't get a refund in the traditional sense. What they'll do is they'll take the number of whatever the max is, and throughout the year, like anything that's you overpay, that's how you get your refund. But basically, the one from that, you do get a federal tax credit. And then other states as well have their own tax credits. So check your state and check your local listings. You might have additional ways to fund the adoption. Okay, So I'm gonna hand it off. We're gonna switch off so she can do the ending. Okay.
About the child tax credit that Sam forgot to mention. Well, not really forgot to mention, but I don't want people to get confused. It's different than that new child tax credit. It's specifically for adoption, and like he said, the child has to already be placed in your home. But it is something. It's not really a way. I mean, it is a way to fund your adoption, but you have to have the money up front. But just knowing that you get that money back might help you when you're planning and saving as well. So yeah, anyone who's looking into adoption, who's trying to figure out if they can afford it, how they can afford it, or anyone who's already going through the process and just trying to learn tips and tricks on funding their adoption. If anybody has any other tips that they know, or if they know anybody who adopted, any tips that they know, or if they are someone who adopted, or if they're going through it and they have other tips that wasn't talked about in this video, leave it in the comments, start a thread, share it, and just help other people. I hope you enjoyed this video. Like, share, subscribe, and post any comments about this if you have any questions as well. I'll see you guys next week.